Here's the question. How do you make the impossible possible? Simple. Remove the I am, the ego. Now, how do you step into that newfound possibility? With a series of small intentional steps. Never forget, the greatest among us started from humble beginnings. But to truly unlock your potential, realize you're here for something greater. If you're yearning for more than just a good life, let's take that small step together to reach greatness. Welcome to the Greatness from Small Beginnings podcast, where we're talking to those who have gone from mediocrity to motivated, overlooked to overachieving, forgettable to unforgettable. Are you ready? Let's go. Good day to everybody. Hello, hello. This is the Greatness from Small Beginnings podcast. As you can see by the shirt, that's one of the shirts I wear every time I go on, one of the 3 or 4 that I have that say something similar. And that's me changing up a little bit. But today I have my son, Paul Callaway. And the reason I hesitate is because, well, I have to introduce him as he's my number 6. All right. Number 6 of 7. He's the 5th of 6 sons. And it works not side by side with me, works in the business that I own part of. And so we do interact quite a bit on business stuff and other things, and are kind of looking at some business ideas, things that might enhance our families or the greater family as we move forward, because we're both entrepreneurial in the way we think. And he currently is like entrepreneurial in the business. Like, how can I make my job, the thing in the business, even better, more efficient? So, greatness from small beginnings. I like starting. There's a particular subject we sat down to talk about, but I always like to start with, let's define greatness. Now, small beginnings, would you agree, especially in light of the subject we're headed towards, that we as a family, the family that we're in, the 9 of us, started from small beginnings, right? You were young, 3 years old when we moved into this house. Yeah. And it was a big step up. I don't know how well you remember the other one, but we were all crammed in this little house that became 1,400 square feet when I added on. Do you remember that fairly well?
I remember the house. I've actually quite a few memories of the house, but I don't remember being crammed.
Yeah, because you were small. Yeah, you were small. You were 3 when we moved here, right? Yeah. So, but this is a big house. Although it was old and wonky, and we've done a lot to it to improve it and all of that. And thank God we've had the resources to do that over the years. Yeah. So that is now 28, almost 29 years here. Okay. So that's a real blessing. But if you can define for me what you think, from your perspective, a practical, living, working definition of what greatness is.
I shouldn't be surprised by this question.
No, you shouldn't be.
Because it's at the beginning of every podcast, but I am a little bit. I think greatness is fulfilling your greatest potential, or successfully walking the path that God has for you. I say it that way because it's a really big question, and I hate to be too specific.
Yeah,
because greatness looks different for everybody.
Yeah.
When you have no resources and you're in that small beginning, greatness might be putting dinner on the table tonight.
That's a really good point. It can be compartmentalized into a moment sometimes.
Yeah. And there are seasons when greatness is just staying alive.
Yeah. Or being grateful that this thing happened and it could have been tragic and it wasn't.
Yeah. I look at greatness in my wife every day, but she wouldn't call it great. She's 9 months pregnant, has 3 other kids that she takes care of and keeps alive. And And sometimes,
And that's amazing.
it's amazing. And sometimes I get home and she's like, I was lazy today. I didn't do the laundry. And I'm like, hey, that's great that you're here and that you're taking
Kids are all safe.
kids.
They're safe. They're alive. They're fed.
Yeah, it's greatness.
And generally very healthy, right? And that is,
And she wouldn't call it greatness, but I would. And so greatness takes many different forms in the micro and the macro.
Okay. So kind of on to the subject then, the subject of how do we that have come from nothing and they're not in nothing now, because you and I talked about the fact that, I mean, your family's fine. You make a reasonable income and, do you have extra to remodel the kitchen? Well, no, you don't. But you have enough and then some, probably.
Yeah.
Really, you have enough plus some. But do you have enough and then to be able to do your dreams at the same time? And so, but hopefully your mom and I have helped you have the mindset and to raise you in such a way that you say, well, but those dreams are important. So how do we get there?
Yeah.
Right. They're not the most important. It is important to feed the kids today and make sure they're alive and all of that. But how do we get to the dreams? How do we do more and bigger? In keeping with what you said is why God made us to be something amazing, something special. But why did he put us here? I always go back to that question. Greatness stems a lot from the idea of why am I here at all? And so if you can remember what we talked about, kind of lay out the subject for the listeners.
But we were talking about suffering and doing hard things. And, I told a little anecdote of when we were on our family vacation. This was 2-3 years ago. And we were at a vacation house in Florida, and a bunch of my nieces were sitting on top of the table where they know they're not allowed to sit, eating,
at least in their own homes.
At least in their own homes, but we're on vacation, so some of the rules don't apply. They're sitting on top of the table, eating beignets out of a pizza box. There's like 5 or 6 of them just sitting there eating sugar and not a care in the world. And
beignets, that's like,
it's not,
that's a special thing, right?
Right. And, my big brother, Keith, kind of looked at them and then looked at me and said, that's what it looks like to grow up rich. And it had never occurred to me before, and as that comment hit me, and then as I processed it over the next day or two, it had never occurred to me before how far our family had come in general, but then a layer deeper, how far my children are from poverty and from not having a need met. And
like picture an onion, like just so many layers,
right?
Like of protection from this what we consider a horrible life, but many consider normal life.
Right. And the idea that, even if everything fell out from underneath me tomorrow, I didn't have a job and, I was sick or broke my leg and couldn't provide for my family. There's so many layers of protection from my kids and not having their needs met. Between my family and my wife's family and the communities that we've built in church and family friends and blood family that I've seen 5 times in the last 20 years. If I had a need and I called them, they'd do it.
Yeah.
And just this idea of how many layers there are between my kids and their needs not being met. And just how much that insulates us from a type of suffering that's so normal for a lot of people.
Yeah. And for us to really understand, I think where we said in that conversation where I kind of started my part is, we're called as Christian, as believers to identify to some degree with the suffering of Christ. But how do we do that when we never feel pain unless we choose to feel pain?
Yeah.
unless we go on a long run and make our body ache, unless we work extra hours. But it's actually a choice. We could get a job where we don't have to work extra hours.
Yeah.
Right? We have so many choices. And so we don't ever get almost put it in these terms, the privilege to suffer and identify with the suffering of Christ, who literally gave up life. He gave up a relationship with God for a time that he used as a lifeline, he says, and he gave that up and sacrificed himself for us. Mm-hmm. And that's and he came to earth and became a man, which I'm sure was pretty complicated from a mental, physical standpoint, but he needed to identify with it. And anyway, that concept is really hard for me. I've been part of building something here that I look at and I say, isn't this great? But then conversation with one of your other brothers, and at times all of them, but how do we teach our kids not to take for granted everything they have? How do we teach them that?
Yeah, I mean, it going back to that same analogy of the layers is we talked about earlier. In order to teach our kids what suffering is, you have to do things that are hard with them, and teach them that it's okay to be uncomfortable. But then you almost have to add more layers of insulation from real true suffering, or suffering that has real true consequences.
Yeah, that's the distinction.
And you have to add more layers so that you can simulate that suffering. And by that, I mean, I have to make enough money and build enough of a career and a life that I can afford to take my kids to places where people really do suffer, and their suffering has consequences. And I can show my kids what other parts of the world look like, and give them a worldview that makes them appreciate a hot shower when they come home, and taking them to
or being on an athletic team that requires discipline. Well, how do you appreciate discipline? Winning championships is great, but those who there is no teams. That we've been to places where the soccer balls they were using literally they might have been a soccer ball at one time,
right?
But they're the skin of the bladder of the soccer ball that they've literally wrapped vines and tape around, and that's now the soccer ball.
Yeah,
and that's their day. They live for those moments of playing with that soccer ball that literally isn't a soccer ball anymore. So the conundrum then is, and then on a day-to-day basis, then how do we, so this is the grander picture. We have to build more layers of, quote, success to literally have the resources in some ways, or the combined resources with those around us, to be able to take our kids and do these things that give about a broader perspective. But then what about day to day? I mean, I don't know if we're going to answer that in this moment, but shouldn't we think about what do we do today? You were talking about your second daughter and how she reacts. Tell that story a little bit. And she's 3.
She's 3. She just turned 3. And she has this tendency that I've noticed, that is, if she doesn't think she can do something, or if something's a little bit hard, she just says she can't do it and decides she's not going to do it. And doesn't even try, and again, she's 3. So taking the path of least resistance is the best path when you're 3.
It's very human when we're 30 something and 60 something, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But it's a tendency that I've picked up on, and that when she gets older, if she still, decides that going to work is hard, well, yeah, going to work is not, it doesn't have to be easy. It's not necessarily supposed to be easy. I've said to myself and to others a lot lately that something being it being hard isn't a good enough reason to not do it. And so when she's, my 3-year-old, and I tell her, you need to take your clothes off so that you can put pajamas on, and she says, I can't. I'm like, well, I know she can take her pants off because she pulls her pants down to go potty. So I know that part she can do, but it's the whole, I can't take my shirt off. Yes, you can. You just have to actually try. It takes effort. And like, mommy and I aren't always going to be here to take your shirt off for you when you need to change your clothes. So I sit there and I tell her, okay, grab your shirt right here. Now lift it up. And she ended up with her arms behind her back with the shirt wrapped around her and couldn't figure out how to get it the rest of the way off because I'm not touching her. I'm making her do it herself. And she figured it out. And I'm fairly confident that tomorrow I'm going to tell her to take her shirt off and she'll probably do it because she's done it. And now she's like, oh yeah, I've done that before. I can do it. But
or maybe she'll resist a couple more times.
Or maybe I hope she doesn't end up being 10 years old and can't take her shirt off.
Yeah.
But it's just that tendency that I've noticed that just to decide I can't and not even try, not even put the effort in.
So would you say it's fair to say that that's not a family culture that we as a Callaways have, and it's not one that you would, of course, promote in your little family that you're growing?
Yeah, of course not.
Yeah, no, we don't. We don't do that.
No, that's not who we are. And she's 3, so she doesn't know that's not who we are yet. But
it's my teacher.
It's my job to teach her that. And we were talking about a hunting trip we went on last year and how it was really hard. And we're climbing up hills where you can, like, standing upright on the hill, you can reach out and touch where you're supposed to step next. Like, it's that steep.
Yeah, you're not leaning very far.
Yeah,
to touch the hill, you're just going to climb, and this is hours.
Oh yeah, I mean, all day hiking up this, and I just.
And you wonder in those moments, just like anything else in life, how is there more uphill than downhill?
Yeah,
or uphill than there is flat. I don't know the math.
I remember joking with the guide that I was walking with that, like, we were walking back to, the actual path that we're supposed to go on back to camp. And he just picks the steepest hill and says, let's go up there and see if we can see anything. Right at the end of the day, like 5 o'clock, sun's starting to go down. And I'm like, okay, I made it. We're heading back to camp. And he's like, let's go check right up here, and just starts climbing straight up another hill. And I'm like, son of a gun.
I remember. Yeah, I had a back issue. I was with Caleb and younger brother, by the way, and he had a hurt ankle.
Yeah.
And we were with the main guide, and I told him these things had happened, and it was as if he literally didn't care. Like, not he didn't forget.
Yeah.
Like, every now and then he'd actually, you guys good? Like, as if to say, yeah, I know you have a hurt ankle and you have a hurt back.
Yeah.
But are you good? And we're like, well, what are we going to say?
Yeah.
No, actually, no. Could you carry me? It was what I wanted to say, but no, I'm Callaway, and this is hard, but can I do it? Yeah, I actually can do it. And so I need to do it.
Yeah. The idea that hiking 18 miles a day on hills like that, carrying a 20-pound backpack and a rifle, and he knew you were hurt and was taking it easy on you.
I think
kind of comedic.
I think it actually was. Yeah.
I know that my guide and my brother were going at a very leisurely pace compared to how I was feeling, which was, I thought that my heart was going to explode out my chest.
Yeah.
But I told my guide several times, I'm going to go slow, but I'm going to go all day. I'm not going to stop. So you probably have to wait for me, but I'll catch up and we can keep going every time. And I did. And I told you earlier, I lost 12 pounds in 4 days, and I was eating everything I could get my hands on.
Yeah. And we worked our butts off.
Yeah, we did.
And what was the memory we came out of it with is it was hard,
yeah,
but it was really good.
It was great.
Yeah. So, so, um, so how do we teach our kids that? Again, I don't think we're going to answer that question in this podcast. And yet, for the listeners, man, we have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
And this goes for employees. This goes for our friends. This goes for our friends that all they want to do is feed their pleasures in whatever way. We have to hold a different standard. Now we don't have to judge them and reject them and criticize or confront. We just need to separate ourselves to some degree from that thinking, because we have to consider, where is this mindset taking us?
Yeah.
As it literally our culture. Okay, that's grand to say America. It's grand to say this world. Where's it taking that culture? But it comes down to a bunch of microcosms where the families that are influential, and I would like to imagine that the Callaways, whether it's that last name or not, that we can influence things, that we can impact the world around us.
Yeah.
With the number of kids and the number of families that they will have in a couple of generations, we'll be in the hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
And they're, if my brothers and sisters and their kids and all of that, we're, the ones we have peripheral influence on, that we're already in the 50s, 60s, 70s.
Yep.
So we think about a number like that, we can actually impact the world. Now it's a long game.
Yeah.
But we're responsible for our kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You don't have to, I don't, in this current stage of life, have to worry about my great grandkids being impactful. My responsibility is to worry about making sure that I'm preparing my kids to be impactful and to be great, whatever that looks like for them in their life.
Yeah, and actually it's a train of thought. It's a way of thinking I've discovered in the last couple of years, is that greatness, yes, greatness from small beginnings. Small can be anything, like just not what I want it to be or not where I came from. But what does greatness look like? And it can be compartmentalized into different things. Say, I want to be great in this area. I heard recently in two different contexts, a study was done that if you do something for 18 minutes a day for a year, you will be better than 95% of the world at that thing.
At that thing. Yep.
Now, that's actually not. So you talk about sacrifice, you talk about suffering. Perhaps that is the way we accomplish what we're after to some degree. And then we do that in front of our kids. And then we engage with them in the things that they need to do, want to do.
Yeah.
For instance, they might want to play the piano. Well, it's going to take 18 minutes a day,
Yeah.
And we use the concept, and we teach them the concept every day, 18 minutes. Someday it'll be more, but we never go below 18 minutes doing that thing. I don't know. There's one option, one answer, so to speak, for how we get the mindset is through action, the real mindset, because then we pile up some wins.
Yeah.
But really, I've discovered things about business that it's actually a thinking game. It's not a doing. It's not about sales and production and then collecting and then putting that money in the bank. Those feel like business.
Yeah.
But business is actually a thinking game.
Mm-hmm.
It's all basically based on concept and what we think next and how clear I am on the future, determining what I'm doing today. And so I've had a scattered brain my whole life. Like, I want to bounce to this, bounce to that. This is important today, but it may not be important tomorrow. And I've learned to hone in on, a few things here and there that have said, okay, this is important. And this concept that we're talking about today of becoming a little bit tactical on teaching those around us. And it's, again, impacting those around us, teaching our kids, but impacting the world around us to do a better job of, well, how do we identify what we need to do and be to be great, to be even close to what we think we're put on this earth to do. And then to really energize that, really enliven that up. Maybe it's short-term goals, long-term goals. I don't know. There's a lot of ways to do it. but give some practical comments to the audience if you think of any. I'm sure you can.
Well, I think it's a long game. Greatness isn't, you're not born great. You're not, you don't wake up one day and you're just great. It's a long game. And I think the stage of life I'm in, with my wife's about to give birth to our fourth child, so I've got 4 kids under 5. Uh, my kids don't have to be great right now.
Mhm.
So, and then there's also the idea of catering to their ability to understand.
Mm.
And, my wife and I firmly believe that at this stage of life, our kids' primary job is to play. Their job is to play, to have an imagination, to be active, to, to just enjoy themselves and be kids.
Mhm.
So in this stage of life, the greatness training is veiled in a lot of fun.
Mm.
We've talked about camping earlier. For kids at 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, camping is just, you just go be outside, and there's food all the time, and you're playing with your friends, and
Mhm.
there's nothing that, if you ask them, it's a blast. It's everything they've ever wanted.
Yeah.
But the idea that you're living without some of your regular amenities, you never sleep as well camping as when you're in your own home, in your own bed, in your own environment.
Yeah.
You're outside all the time. It's really hot some days during the day, and then it's really cold at night, and there's
Mhm.
bugs, and
Mhm.
so those things are all, to an adult, that's not greatness, that's not suffering,
Yeah.
because they're all small things, and adults enjoy camping because you get to relax, and for us it's kind of an unplug kind of
Yeah.
thing.
You change the context, you get to do it different.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's,
Mhm.
for my kids, it's greatness training because it's teaching them to be comfortable and enjoy themselves in a different environment, in a less comfortable environment,
Mm.
in an environment where they don't have all the things they normally have. And they have to go use their imagination because they don't have all their toys. And,
Mm.
you go play with a stick,
That's a great point.
and so,
And that lends itself to 10, 15 years later, where you literally take them to another country and have them experience the sounds, the smells, the tastes
yeah.
of let's say poverty,
Mhm.
like so that they can actually conceptualize it.
Yeah.
And then of course that lends itself to appreciation and gratitude, hopefully.
Sure.
It better,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. It better.
Yeah.
So it's also, you know, it's about stages and catering to their level of understanding. And my oldest is 4; she'll be 5 in a couple of months, and we'd like to put her in, some dance classes because she loves to dance, and to her that would be so fun. But dance also requires discipline.
Mhm.
It requires doing what you're told by people who know better than you,
Mhm.
and that is greatness training.
That's a good point.
Because
I like that term.
there's nothing new under the sun. Imitation is the best path to greatness, because greatness, people have been great before me, and they will be great before my kids. And so when you can learn from people that have done better and do better than you,
Mm.
well, that starts when they're 4 years old and they're in dance classes, when they're, on sports teams, things like that. So,
Yeah.
like, you take it in stages, and as they get older, it can get more serious. And if they're really good at sports and they want to be athletic and, pursue that, then they're probably going to have coaches that are a little bit harder on them. And that's going to be uncomfortable.
Should be.
It should be.
Yeah.
But the idea is that we've been training them to be uncomfortable and to learn from whoever you need to learn from. And, all of these things, as they get older, it's like, one of the things I realized when I first became a parent was that there's a reason that God gives us kids as babies.
Mm.
Because when my daughter was born, there's no chance I was ready to be a parent to a teenage girl.
Yeah. That's
No
a fact.
chance.
That's a fact.
And I'm still not ready. But I got my baby when she was a baby, and all I had to do was keep a newborn alive. She couldn't talk, couldn't walk. All she needed was food and a clean diaper and a safe place to sleep.
Mhm.
And I could do those things not knowing anything about how to be a parent.
Mhm.
And then as they get a little bit older, they start to crawl, and then they're eating regular food, and I'm learning in stages, and I'm growing up with my child.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's I'm very thankful that that's the way that God designed the whole process, because I I'm still not ready to be a parent to teenagers. I don't even know what
Yeah.
that means, what that looks like, and
Yeah.
hopefully by the time they get there, I'll be a little more ready. But
Yeah.
but it's the greatness training, and the moments that I get to have with my daughters as little girls will hopefully help us be connected in a way that when they are teenagers, we can have this whole built foundation of a relationship,
Hmm.
so that when the hard moments come, we can sit in the discomfort together, knowing that no matter what happens, she's going to be my daughter and I'm going to be her dad.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
the end of
That's a good
whatever
point.
situation it is,
Mhm.
we're going to be there together at the end. And all of those things, all of the years of building that relationship, it's the same thing for building greatness. You build a relationship with discomfort, with suffering, with discipline, with anger, with hunger, with
wins,
with
and good times.
yeah, with joy, with with anything that goes into the emotional uh ball of greatness that's inside of you. You have to build those relationships. And so it starts today, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, whoever you're with, whatever's around you. You get to build that relationship, and it doesn't matter what's happened in the past. But what's happened in the past can inform the future, but it doesn't have to be the future.
Absolutely. Especially if you're dragging that anchor along with you.
Yeah.
Cut it off and do your best to not pick it back up.
Yeah, or just get stronger.
Hmm.
Sometimes that baggage doesn't go away, or it might get smaller, but it doesn't disappear.
It gets stronger so it can become lighter.
Yeah.
That's a good
There's two ways. There's two ways, right?
Yeah.
I can if I've got to pull a big trailer, I can either get a bigger truck or I can get a smaller trailer.
Or have some work done on the engine.
Yeah.
Right. To amp up the engine.
There's more than one way to do it, and
maybe all of them are what we need to do.
all
It's
of them,
about
any of
perspective,
them.
and that's what it goes back to: thinking, conceptualize the end result, and then let's figure out how it works for each of us,
Yeah.
and how we get to greatness in different spots, different compartments of our life. And they're going to overlap. Of course they should. But then think deeply, pray to God. He has the answer. He put you on the earth for something. You have to ask him what greatness looks like, and then how do I get there?
Yep.
Because he's actually got the path. Yeah. So if you looked out 10 years, maybe not in a functional, practical sense, it's hard to rub the crystal ball, right? And look at that and say,
Yep.
but what does greatness look like for you? Your oldest daughter's almost 15. What does greatness look like for you 10 years from now? Or maybe take it to 20.
Hmm. I think having deep connections with all of my kids and a thriving marriage would be top of that list. Regardless of the house or the cars or the circumstances, a loving wife and kids that I love and they know that I love them. That would be great.
Like is a different question, though, right?
Yeah, mom always said, if you don't hate me every now and then I'm not doing a very good job.
There's a real point there.
And yeah, and so regardless of how much they like me, if they know I love them, that's great, because that sets them up for the next generation of knowing what's important.
Yeah. The one thing I would finish with is that the way that I want to show at this point in my life, my love for you, your wife, all of my kids, their spouses, and the grandkids is by continually gaining wisdom so that if a question comes up, I might not answer it directly, right? Because I rarely
Never
answer.
do.
I never answer them directly, but I know where to get the answer, and I can point and I can lean people towards an answer. So I need to get wisdom and give wisdom,
Yeah.
and that I will still be accomplishing.
Yeah.
And it's not about stuff, and it's not about money, though that may reveal things.
Mhm.
Right. And so it is part of it for sure. Like if I go start another business and make that successful someday, then that's an accomplishment that has dollar signs attached to it.
Yeah.
But I promised a group a month ago, I won't ever retire. That's not in this DNA. Some of that tendency is there because of the culture I came from. But this guy, I won't retire. I don't think it's biblical. I don't think that's God's way of getting me to greatness. And that also doesn't speak, that wouldn't speak the retirement in its normal sense, where you buy an RV and, run around the country for a year or two and then get sick and die. That means that is not the idea. Giving that wisdom away, getting more, learning, building, doing stuff that is impactful and significant is what I want to do. And I want to drag you guys along with me as long as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And anybody else that is willing to attach themselves to the cart, so to speak. And I look forward to those days. Any closing words? So you've heard me. You've heard a few of the podcasts at least, right? Closing question I'll ask is, okay, you dive down through this microphone and you are in someone's ear. They're taking a walk, they're driving, and they're listening to this on YouTube and whatever. And you've got 30 seconds to a minute, and then you're going to disappear. Maybe never talk to that person again. What do you say to them right now? I mean, you may never see them because you can take a risk if you want. But what do you say to them?
Oh, there's a whole list of cliches that come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And to go back to what I said earlier, there's been a lot of great people before me, and I don't think I'm great yet. So a quote is, there's good news and bad news. The good news is, the bad news is you are the biggest problem in your life. The good news is you are also the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And I follow that up with one
that's gold,
that sticks in my head. It echoes around all the time, and it is, wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
And what that means to me is that if you don't fix your problems, they will follow you everywhere.
Mm. Or in essence, use your assets.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You get to choose.
Yeah. And
that's great.
I mean, there's all kinds of things that I could say and advice that I can give and try and be motivational. But the reality is that it all starts and ends in our hearts.
Mm.
And there's nothing that I can say that's going to make anybody do anything or be great. It's a choice that they have to make.
That is a great point.
And so I'll stick to the wiser people before me and hope that what they say makes a difference.
Good. And I appreciate that ending. And like I'm beginning to end every podcast with this statement from Zig Ziglar, and then I'll end it with the call to action. You were designed for accomplishment, engineered for success, and endowed with the seeds of greatness. Now go grow them, right? Grow the seeds. And I'll end with this call to action. Now, go be great. It's your choice.